The warning came in the form of silence. For months, Earth's deep space telescopes had intercepted faint, irregular bursts of energy that no one could quite explain, but then the signals ceased without warning. That silence was more unsettling than the noise. Dr. Lena Arkwright, astrophysicist turned reluctant envoy, had been the first to insist that the anomaly was artificial. Her colleagues mocked her at first, but now her theory was all anyone on the Global Council could talk about. Something or someone had been watching and had decided to stop announcing itself. A world still bruised from decades of internal rivalry struggled to act as one. The Coalition Navy, a fragile union of Earth's once fractured militaries, stretched itself thin across the solar system. Mars outposts fell into uneasy quiet. Mining crews in the belt whispered about ghostly lights gliding past their stations. Fear traveled faster than the fastest ship humanity had ever built. Captain Elias Mercer didn't like being a symbol. He preferred command inside the hull of the Resolute, a frigate built more from salvage ingenuity than true design. His crew adored him not because of charisma, but because he carried their fears openly, never hiding the cost of service. When orders arrived to investigate a vanishing mining operation near Jupiter's moons, Elias knew at once that this was no accident of equipment or neglect. He also knew Lena Arkwright would be joining him. Her presence a sign that the mission was more political than scientific. The Resolute drifted into the debris field where the miner station should have been. Nothing remained but melted struts, still radiating residual heat. Weapons fire. Elias muttered, studying the jagged edges on his display. His helmsman swallowed hard but said nothing. Then the comms officer picked up something faint. A pulse too regular to be random, too alien to be human. The crew's first glimpse came without warning. A shape that eclipsed the stars. No human engineering could explain the clean geometry of its surfaces, the way its metal seemed to drink starlight rather than reflect it. The alien craft floated there in silence, radiating indifference more than hostility, as though its presence alone was enough to crush human confidence. A ripple of unease traveled through the ship. Lena leaned closer to the view screen, her voice steady but her hands trembling. They aren't hiding anymore. Elias felt every eye on him. Protocol demanded retreat, a measured report to higher command, but instinct clawed against his training. Retreat meant Earth would learn nothing and fear everything. "Open a channel," he ordered. Static answered. The alien ship pulsed once, a wave of energy that rattled the Resolute's hull and froze its systems for an instant. No shot fired, no word spoken, just a demonstration. For a moment, it seemed the end had arrived without a battle. Then, against all expectations, the alien vessel turned away. It did not pursue, did not destroy, merely drifted into black as though deciding humanity wasn't worth its time. That dismissal stung worse than any threat. When the Resolute limped back to Earth, the council chamber erupted in chaos. Generals shouted for preemptive strikes. Diplomats begged for patience. Lena delivered her findings. The aliens had measured humanity and chosen not to annihilate them. Yet weighed heavier than any weapon. In the quiet that followed the storm of arguments, Elias found himself staring at a projection of Earth slowly rotating above the chamber. He saw oceans, forests, and the glittering scars of cities, all of it fragile under sky that now felt hostile. Humanity had been noticed, evaluated, and filed away as insignificant. For Elias, insignificance was intolerable. For Lena, it was a reprieve that would not last. Neither admitted it aloud, but both knew the same truth. The next move would decide whether humanity remain a fleeting experiment in the galaxy or proved itself something far more dangerous. Would you like me to continue with Section 2 in the same style, or do you want to find Section 1 with more character depth and dialogue before pushing forward? The first clash came sooner than anyone expected. Weeks after the Resolute's return, the alien presence ceased to be rumor and became fact, announced not by diplomacy but by fire. A patrol convoy near Saturn's outer moons vanished, leaving only fragments of hull scattered like broken teeth across the void. Humanity had no proof beyond silence, yet everyone knew who was responsible. The Council could no longer argue in abstractions. War had already begun, even if only one side admitted it. Captain Elias Mercer found himself recalled to duty before his ship had fully recovered from its encounter. He stood on the command deck of the Resolute, newly outfitted with experimental shielding and improvised rail cannons. The upgrades reeked of desperation. Every bolt and circuit rushed into place. His crew bore the same marks. Haunted eyes, stiff movements, an unspoken awareness that their survival had been a coin toss once before and might soon be again. He told them the truth because lies would have been crueler. "We can't match them ship for ship," he said. "What we can do is outthink them. That's our weapon, and we'll use it until it breaks." Lena Arkwright remained aboard as scientific advisor, though everyone understood her role had shifted. She was no longer just a voice of analysis, but an anchor for Council's hopes. The one who might decipher alien intent before humanity was crushed beneath it. She spent hours poring over captured fragments of alien transmissions, her mind a web of theories and probabilities. Her exhaustion showed in the way she held her shoulders, but her determination never wavered. "They aren't gods," she told Elias in one of their rare private moments. "They bleed resources, make choices, and leave patterns. That means we can learn them, maybe even surprise them." The surprise came in the belt. A detachment of alien drones, sleek, precise, and utterly silent, moved to seize a cluster of mining platforms rich in helium-3. Humanity could not afford to lose them. Without fuel, even survival skirmishes would end in drift and suffocation. The Resolute, accompanied by 2 smaller corvettes, was dispatched to intercept. Every calculation suggested the battle would be suicidal, but surrendering the platforms meant conceding the war before it began. As the alien drones advanced in flawless formation, Elias ordered the corvettes to scatter, leaving the Resolute apparently exposed. Predictability was the alien strength. They fought like mathematicians, each movement part an elegant equation. Elias gambled on chaos. He pushed his frigate into the debris fields of the abandoned mines, hiding among jagged rocks and drifting machinery. The aliens pursued, dividing to surround him. That was when his crew detonated the first charges. Improvised mines, hidden within tumbling boulders, tore through the leading drone with savage violence. The void blossomed with molten fragments, not the clean geometries the enemy expected. The remaining drones adjusted with unnerving speed, but humanity's trap was already unfolding. Corvettes returned from opposite flanks, slinging rail shot into the confusion. Elias maneuvered recklessly, scraping the Resolute shields across jagged stone, using cover in ways no alien algorithm would ever risk. It was not a victory without cost. The second corvette vanished in a flash of ruptured reactors, but when the last drone disintegrated into silence, the belt remained in human hands. Word of the victory spread like oxygen to a suffocating flame. Humanity could fight back. Humanity could win not by strength, but by stubborn unpredictability. Yet the triumph was hollow for Elias, who walked through the wreckage-strewn hangar and counted the faces missing from his crew. He carried their absence like armor, refusing to let triumph blind him to the price. Back on Earth, the Council's divisions deepened. The generals called for escalation, urging construction of vast fleets, though the resources barely existed. The diplomats begged for contact, insisting that humans could not withstand endless attrition. Lena stood in the center of the storm, her voice sharp but controlled. "We must assume they underestimated us once. They won't do it again. If we wait for them to strike, they'll choose the ground. We have to act before the window closes." Her words seeded a dangerous plan. If aliens fought by rules of order and precision, humanity's best chance lay in disorder. Raids, sabotage, daring incursions into contested zones, each small enough to be dismissed, yet together enough to bleed the enemy. Elias accepted the strategy with grim resolve, aware that it would scatter his people across dark places where rescue was impossible. But he also recognized its necessity. The war would not be won in grand fleets colliding. It would be won in moments where human defiance twisted probability against reason. As preparations began, a question lingered in every whispered corridor. Why had the aliens not unleashed their full strength already? Why had Earth itself not been reduced to ash? Lena considered the puzzle late into sleepless nights, tracing patterns in intercepted transmissions. She could not shake the suspicion that humanity was not at war with a single enemy, but with an empire divided within itself, an empire debating whether humans were worth the trouble of annihilation. That division might be humanity's only chance. The section of the council chamber reserved for military dispatches fell silent when Elias's report arrived. The Resolute had survived, though scarred, and the belt remained theirs. The council erupted with fresh arguments, but outside those marble halls the people of Earth celebrated. They clung to hope as fiercely as they clung to survival. Elias, staring from his cabin at the stars beyond Saturn, felt no celebration. He knew the truth that others ignored. This victory had not deterred the enemy, only provoked them. Somewhere in the void, the aliens were recalculating, adjusting their flawless equations to account for chaos. And when they returned, it would not be with drones, but with warships whose scale humanity had never imagined. He closed his eyes and whispered a promise to those who had died in the belt. We'll make them bleed again and again until they understand what it means to fight us. Would you like me to carry the tone of growing tension and resilience straight into Section 3? Or should I intensify the alien perspective first to deepen the sense of looming escalation? The alien fleet revealed itself not with subtlety, but with overwhelming presence. When their warships emerged at the edge of the solar system, even the most optimistic council members ceased speaking of negotiations. The vessels dwarfed anything humanity had built, colossal crescents of living metal, engines radiating silent menace. Entire cities could have been housed within their hulls. And yet, the fleet did not advance immediately. They lingered at the periphery, like predators circling uncertain prey, as if still debating whether Earth was worth the hunt. Captain Elias Mercer had expected this moment. Every skirmish, every daring raid, every calculated risk had only delayed the inevitable. His frigate, the Resolute, was patched together from too many battles to count. It scars a map of humanity's struggle. His crew remained loyal, but he saw the exhaustion carved into their expressions. He had nothing left to offer them but honesty. We'll never match them in firepower, he told them, his voice low yet firm. But firepower isn't the measure of survival. Our measure is will. We endure, and in enduring we make them doubt. Dr. Lena Arkwright stood by his side, pale from sleepless nights but unbroken. She had spent months dissecting fragments of alien transmissions, searching for some crack in their certainty. At last, she found it: division. The aliens were not unanimous in their approach to humanity. Some argued that extermination was wasteful, that Earth might yet prove useful as a vassal or ally. Others pressed for annihilation, unwilling to tolerate the chaos humans embodied. That schism, Lena believed, was the sliver of daylight through which humanity might thrust its survival. The Council, desperate for any chance, sanctioned a single audacious strike. The plan bordered on madness. Infiltrate the alien fleet, identify the command nexus, and cripple it before the invaders could bring their full weight upon Earth. Elias volunteered the Resolute for the task, not because it was the strongest ship, but because its crew had already stared death in the face and returned. The mission was less about strength than about defiance, and defiance was the one resource humans possess in abundance. The approach was a gauntlet of terror. Alien patrol craft shadowed their advance, their movements flawless and efficient. Elias drove the Resolute into asteroid fields, using raw instinct where the enemy relied on prediction. Twice they should have been destroyed. Twice they slipped through by the barest margin. Each escape left his crew trembling, but more determined. By the time they reached the edge of the fleet, resolve had crystallized into something sharper than fear. Lena's calculations identified the flagship, a vessel so vast it eclipsed moons. Its surface pulsed with radiant lines that seemed less like design and more like a heartbeat. To destroy such a monstrosity was beyond imagination, yet Lena whispered that destruction was not the goal. "We don't need to break them," she told Elias. "We only need to prove we can reach them." The Resolute hurled itself into the heart of the formation, weapons blazing. Alien warships reacted with cold precision, swarming like predators. But the human frigate's unpredictability confounded their perfect algorithms. Mines hidden in debris clouds detonated in unexpected patterns. Decoy signals mimic human reinforcements that did not exist. Every trick was a lie, every maneuver a gamble, and for a time, lies and gambles carried them forward. Then the flagship awoke. A beam of energy, pure and silent, carved through space, nearly cleaving the Resolute in half. Alarm screamed, and half the crew compartments went dark. Elias clung to the railing, blood seeping from a gash on his forehead, yet his voice cut through the chaos. "Stay on course. They will not forget us." His words were less command than promise, and his crew obeyed with a devotion born of shared desperation. At the final moment, Lena transmitted a signal into the flagship's core, a synthesis of human ingenuity and stolen alien code. The signal did not destroy, it disrupted. For a breathless instant, the colossal vessel faltered, its radiant lines dimming, its movement stuttering as though uncertainty had infected its perfect design. In that hesitation lay victory. Humanity had touched the untouchable, pierced the illusion of inevitability. The Resolute did not escape intact. Fire spread through its decks, oxygen vented into space, and countless lives were lost in the silence of the void. But fragments of the crew survived, and more importantly, the message survived. The alien fleet withdrew, not in defeat, but in reconsideration. For the first time, they faced an enemy that refused to bow to inevitability, an enemy whose strength was not measured in weapons, but in will. Elias, battered and scarred, stood in the wreckage of his bridge and stared at the stars. He knew the war was far from over. The aliens would return, stronger, more determined, and humanity would bleed again. But he also knew they had shifted the balance. They had forced the galaxy to acknowledge them, not as prey, not as subjects, but as something far more dangerous, rivals. Lena joined him, her face hollow yet lit by a spark of fierce pride. They wanted to measure us, she whispered. Now they know the truth. We don't fit their equations. Elias managed the shadow of a smile, weary yet unbroken. Good. Let them try to solve us. And in that moment, among the wreckage and loss, humanity's future ceased to be a question of survival alone. It became a declaration, fragile, defiant, and unstoppable, that they would not vanish quietly into the silence of the stars. Would you like me now combine all three sections into a continuous, polished 3,000-word narrative draft? Or should I expand them further toward your original 5,000-word goal with deeper character moments and more descriptive detail? The council chamber smelled of smoke and fatigue, as though the building itself had endured battle alongside the ships it commanded. The alien fleet's retreat had been hailed across Earth as victory, yet those who understood war knew it was only a pause. Celebrations filled the cities, but in the command centers the air was thick with dread. Humanity had earned recognition, not safety. Recognition made them a question the galaxy could no longer ignore, and questions in the void were rarely left unanswered for long. Captain Elias Mercer found little solace in survival. He moved through the reconstructed decks of the Resolute like a ghost, touching bulkheads that had once been filled with the voices of crew who would never return. Their absence weighed heavier than the metals pinned to his chest. He had led them into the impossible, and though they had succeeded, the price clung to him like blood he could not wash away. When others hailed him as a symbol, he felt only the burden of being proof that humanity could bleed and keep standing. Dr. Lena Arkwright had become a different kind of symbol. Her warning that the aliens were divided had been vindicated, and her disruption of the flagship had elevated her from scientist to strategist. Yet she bore her newfound authority uneasily. She spent nights alone with the alien data she had pulled from the Nexus, combing through it with feverish obsession. There were patterns she had glimpsed in those stolen fragments, hints of hierarchies and fractures within the enemy ranks. It was not victory she saw in their hesitation. It was indecision. Somewhere beyond the veil of stars, an empire was arguing with itself, and humanity had become the subject of debate. Elias found her in the data center, eyes ringed with exhaustion, fingers trembling over shifting holographic scripts. "You've stopped eating," he said, his voice carrying more concern than reproach. She didn't look up. "If I stop, we lose our only lead. They're not united. Some of them want us erased, but others hesitate. That hesitation is our shield, Elias. If it breaks, there's nothing left but annihilation." He stepped closer, resting a hand on the console to draw her eyes to him. "You can't carry this alone. We need more than fear. We need purpose." Her gaze softened, though her voice remained taut with urgency. "Then give them purpose. Because what comes next will be worse than fleets. It will be decision. And once they decide, there's no retreat." The next move came not from the aliens, but from within. Factions on Earth, emboldened by the survival of the Resolute, began to splinter. Some demanded escalation, striking alien outposts, building weapons that skirted the edges of sanity. Others argued that humanity should withdraw, hide within its homeworld, and hope obscurity became protection once more. The council fractured under the weight of fear and pride, and the possibility of civil conflict loomed like another storm cloud. Elias was dragged into the center of the argument. Soldiers wanted him to lead a campaign of vengeance. Politicians wanted him to temper his victories into treaties. He rejected both, his voice steady but hard. I don't fight for revenge. I don't fight for appeasement. I fight for survival. And survival means unity. If we tear ourselves apart now, we save the enemy the trouble of finishing us. His words calmed some, angered others, but they could not be ignored. Lena chose a different path. She presented her findings to the council in a session that nearly collapsed under its own hostility. With a precision that silenced even the loudest generals, she explained the fractures in the alien consensus. They cannot agree on us, she said. They do not understand us. That ignorance is our only weapon. If we rush to prove ourselves predictable, either by begging or by lashing out, we give them consensus. If we remain what they fear most, unfathomable, then we endure. Her words reframed the war. Humanity did not need to win outright. It needed to remain unsolvable. That became the fragile strategy, though not all supported it. Still, the plan held long enough to buy Earth another breath, another day to prepare. Later, when the council dissolved into another storm of arguments, Elias and Lena stood together on the observation deck of the Resolute. Through the viewport stretched the fractured beauty of Earth, half in shadow, half in light. They'll come again, Elias murmured, his eyes fixed on the stars. They will, Lena answered. And when they do, they'll still be arguing about what we are. He turned to her, searching her face for certainty. And what are we? She let the silence stretch before answering, her voice quiet but firm. We're the variable they can't solve, the error they can't correct. That's what terrifies them, Elias. Not our weapons, not our ships. Us. For the first time since the war began, Elias allowed himself to believe that survival was not a pause before extinction, but the beginning of something larger. Humanity had forced itself into the conversation of the stars, and though the galaxy might resist, the story was no longer theirs alone to write. Above them, constellations burned with indifferent fire, yet Elias felt a strange kinship with that endless dark. Humanity did not belong here yet, but they were not leaving, and as long as they endured, the galaxy would never again dismiss them as insignificant. Do you want me to merge sections 1 to 4 into a seamless novel-like draft, around 4,000 words, or keep building section by section until we reach the full 5,000-word target?